At first glance, Matthew McConaughey's face radiates joy and confidence, a sunlit grin that has lit every red carpet, every movie poster, every interview set. But today, that familiar warmth carries an unexpected weight. Because behind that easygoing charm and man-of-the-people persona lies a new, heartbreaking reality, a life-altering diagnosis that threatens to change everything we thought we knew about our beloved star. Matthew McConaughey is saying goodbye after tragic diagnosis isn't just another clickbait headline. It's a gut punch of news that has rippled through Hollywood and around the world, leaving fans breathless, hearts racing, and screens filled with tributes and prayers. In this video, we're going to peel back the layers of Matthew's journey, his meteoric rise from small-town Texas to Oscar-winning stardom, the personal battles we've never known he was fighting, and the difficult decisions he now faces. You'll hear from the close circle of friends, colleagues, and family members who stood by him through every triumph and tragedy. We'll dive deeply into the medical details of his condition, what it is, how it's progressing, and why doctors are uncertain about what comes next. And we'll explore the very human side of a man who for decades has been the picture of vitality and strength. Why does this matter to you? Because this isn't just Matthew McConaughey's story. It's a story about resilience in the face of the unknown, about the fragility of even the brightest stars, and about the power of community when someone we admire needs us most. We all know the words he made famous, "All right, all right, all right." But today, even those reassuring words feel fragile, tinged with the weight of real uncertainty. As you watch, ask yourself, what would you do if the light started to fade on your most cherished dreams? How far would you go to find hope again? We'll begin at the beginning, at his youth in Uvalde, Texas, where a young Matthew first discovered his gift for storytelling and performance. You might remember him as the laid-back college student in Dazed and Confused, but few recall the intense self-doubt he battled behind the scenes. From early rejection letters to casting directors to the sting of personal loss, Matthew learned the art of perseverance long before Hollywood discovered him. That early resilience would propel him to iconic roles, from the rogue detective Rust Cola in True Detective to the heart-wrenching portrayal of Ron Woodroof in Dallas Buyers Club, a performance that won him the Academy Award for Best Actor in 2014. But even as he scaled the heights of fame, Matthew fought silent battles with health challenges. In interviews, he's alluded to unexplained fatigue, lingering pains, and moments of dizziness that left even him asking, "What's going on with my body?" Hollywood insiders noticed he began canceling events without explanation, trading red carpets for quiet evenings in Austin. His trademark vigor gave way to slower mornings, measured steps, and a reluctance to speak about what was really happening behind the scenes. Then came the doctor's visit, the scans, the tests, the hushed consultations in sterile rooms, and finally, the diagnosis that shattered the comforting illusion, an aggressive progressive illness that, according to his medical team, leaves narrow windows for intervention. We'll share the raw, unfiltered reactions in those immediate moments. The tremor in his wife's voice, the tears in his children's eyes, the solemn nods from co-stars who had spent years seeing him as invincible. You'll hear from the renowned specialists who've studied Matthew's case, offering candid assessments of the treatment options on the table and the bleak odds he's up against. And you'll listen as Matthew, in his own words, reflects on what goodbye might mean to him. A farewell to roles he's always dreamed of, to public appearances, to the very routine of family life that he cherishes most. But this video isn't just about despair. It's about fighting back, about redefining what it means to live fully, even when the end seems near. We'll spotlight the grassroots outpouring of support, flash mobs of fans holding candlelight vigils outside movie theaters, Instagram tributes flooding the timeline, fellow actors rallying to record video messages of hope, and we'll introduce you to the groundbreaking treatments he's exploring, from innovative immunotherapies to experimental clinical trials that offer a glimmer of possibility. Every step of the way we'll be right there, giving you an unvarnished look at the challenges and the small victories that matter. Because when a star like Matthew McConaughey confronts mortality, it touches something deep within us all. We are drawn to his warmth, his authenticity, his refusal to play by Hollywood's rules, and now we're called to return that same love and courage back to him. So stick around, because in the next section, will trace the exact moment Matthew knew his life was about to change forever, and reveal the details of the prognosis that he's kept private until now. This is a story you won't want to miss. December 15, 2023, began like any other winter morning for Matthew. The crisp Texas air had that familiar chill as he sipped his coffee on the porch of Long Branch Ranch. His wife, Camila, exchanged soft smiles with him over ceramic mugs, while their children scampered through the grass in pajamas. But behind the routine of family banter and gentle sunlight, an undercurrent of tension crackled. 2 days earlier, he had undergone a series of imaging scans to investigate persistent headaches and unexplained fatigue. What he thought would be a precautionary step turned into the catalyst for life-altering news. Late that afternoon, his phone buzzed with the lab's secure message, "Please contact Dr. Richardson at the Oncology Center." Every instinct screamed for denial, but deep down, Matthew sensed that everything was about to change. Dr. Helena Richardson had been one of the foremost specialists in neuro-oncology for over 20 years. When Matthew walked into her sleek office, he noticed the muted palette, the anatomical brain models, and the gentle hum of a white noise machine. She greeted him with calm professionalism, her voice measured. "Mr. McConaughey, the scans reveal a lesion on your temporal lobe," she said without preamble. As she detailed the size, location, and growth rate of the mass, her tone remained compassionate but frank. She spoke of mass effect, swelling, and the compression of neural pathways responsible for language and motor coordination. Words like glioblastoma and aggressive hung in the air like storm clouds. A 7 to 10 month survival window without treatment. A variable 2-year prognosis with surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. Each phrase landed heavier than the last, as if time itself slowed to let the gravity of her report sink in. Matthew's first impulse was to crack a joke. Any joke, as he so often did when the world felt overwhelming. Yet no quip came. Instead, he sat there in stunned silence, his grizzled beard bristling with tension, eyes fixed on the window that overlooked a small courtyard. Around him, memories flickered, the roar of "all right, all right, all right," erupting from a theater audience, the tearful applause at his Oscar acceptance speech, the laughter shared with castmates on set. And suddenly, those moments felt distant, fragile. He thought of his father's voice urging him to keep going, his mother's unwavering belief. He imagined his children growing up without him. A tightening ache took hold in his chest. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he asked the question he dreaded: what happens next? Behind him, Camilla entered the room, her brow furrowed with concern. She placed a steadying hand on his shoulder and asked if she could sit. Matthew turned, his eyes reflecting a tumult of shock, sorrow, and fierce determination. He repeated the 3 ominous words, glioblastoma multiforme, and watched as a flicker of fear crossed her face. Then she folded him into an embrace, whispering, "We'll face this together." In that moment, cameras and spotlights felt irrelevant. There were no roles to inhabit, no scripts to learn. There was only a husband, a wife, and the stark reality of a relentless disease. Friends, colleagues, and loved ones flooded their phones with messages, some offering prayers, others shared stories of survival. Yet nothing could blunt the raw ache of standing at the threshold between hope and uncertainty. Over the next 48 hours, Matthew dove into research with the same intensity he once applied to perfecting a role. He pored over medical journals, clinical trial data, and case studies of high-profile patients who had faced similar diagnoses. One landmark study from Stanford detailed a 2-step protocol combining surgical resection with personalized genetic immunotherapy, pushing median survival beyond 18 months. Another trial at MD Anderson explored implantable chemotherapy wafers that released targeted drugs directly at the tumor site. Every data point became a bead of possibility on a necklace of relentless hope. They spoke with Dr. Akira Tanaka, a neurosurgeon specializing in awake craniotomies, and with Dr. Sylvia Moreno, a pioneering radiation oncologist. Each specialist offered a blend of cautious optimism and unwavering realism. The medical roadmap ahead was grueling: a 6-hour brain operation, 6 weeks of daily radiation sessions, and months of IV chemotherapy. Side effects could include cognitive fog, severe fatigue, and an elevated risk of infection. Meanwhile, the news leaked to the press. Within hours, the hashtag #StayStrongMcConaughey trended on social media. Fans posted images of him in his iconic cowboy hat and denim shirts, overlaying words of support, personal testimonies, and favorite quotes from his films. Candlelight vigils erupted spontaneously outside the Paramount lot in Hollywood, drawing strangers who shared stories of how his work had touched their lives. Digital billboards in New York's Times Square flashed his smiling face alongside messages of solidarity. Peers in the entertainment industry publicly offered their services, from private consultations with mental health experts to invitations for him to join upcoming projects when he felt ready. The outpouring was immediate, overwhelming. It was a testament to the impact one person can have on millions. But for Matthew, the fight had begun. The morning of January 10th arrived with a steel-gray sky above Austin, as if nature itself were bracing for what lay ahead. Matthew and Camila drove to the hospital in near silence, the rumble of traffic echoing the pounding in his chest. Signed consent forms lay on the seat between them, 60 pages of legalese detailing risks that would make even the most seasoned actor blanch: swelling, infection, loss of speech, paralysis. Yet he stared at those words with the same calm focus he once brought to a camera rehearsal. "Let's do this," he told his wife, sliding his hand into hers. Inside the surgical suite, Dr. Akira Tanaka waited, flanked by a team of nurses, anesthesiologists, and surgical technologists. They had planned an awake craniotomy to maximize tumor removal while preserving language function. Electrodes were placed to monitor brain activity. Functional MRI maps hung on monitors like treasure maps. As anesthesia took hold, Matthew drifted in and out of consciousness, comforted by Camila's whisper, "You're not alone." The world blurred, beeping machines, muffled voices, until he opened his eyes mid-procedure and answered simple questions. "Repeat after me. I am all right." His voice, hoarse but steady, reaffirmed the fragile bridge between life and art. 6 hours later, the surgical lights dimmed. Dr. Tanaka emerged from the suite, exhaustion and relief mingling in his expression. "We removed 80% of the mass," he said, removing his surgical cap. "We spared the critical speech centers, but you'll need intensive rehab." Matthew nodded, his first words in hours. "Thank you." In the ICU wired to monitors, he saw Camila's tear-streaked face light up as she whispered, "You did it." He managed a small smile before sleep claimed him again. Recovery was a marathon of micro-victories and setbacks. The first time he spoke unprompted, "Love you," brought a cheer from nurses. Then came the tremor in his right hand, the slurred vowels he hadn't expected. He spent hours in speech therapy, repeating tongue twisters, practicing names of characters he'd played. "Rust Cola," he'd say, "Jake Brigance," and gradually the words snapped into clarity. Physical therapy followed, balancing on one foot, gripping a stress ball, practicing golf swings in an empty ward hallway to rebuild motor pathways. Each session left him drenched in sweat and frustration, yet he limped back to bed with the same determination that once drove him to perfect a movie monologue. While hospitals bathed him in fluorescent lights, the world outside geared up for his next battle, radiation. Camila became his steadfast advocate, coordinating appointments, researching nutritional plans to bolster his strength, and ensuring he stayed hydrated. Fans sent care packages, handwritten cards, quilts stamped with "All right, all right, all right," jars of wildflower honey from Tennessee. On social media, celebrities shared childhood photos alongside memories of working with him, urging him to keep fighting like you always have. Those messages arrived on bad days like life raft, tethering him to hope when nausea and fatigue threatened to drag him under. One evening, halfway through his 6-week course, he sat on the edge of the treatment room's recliner, IV running, machine clicking in steady rhythm. A young intern, barely 25, hovered with caution. She'd read somewhere that actors liked distractions, so she asked about his favorite film scores. Matthew told her about Darwin Deese's dreamlike cues, about Gustavo Santaolall's haunting riffs in The Last of Us. He spoke of music with the same reverence he applied to scripts, each note a lifeline back to the world he might lose. The intern smiled, noting down recommendations for her next road trip. Even in the throes of radiation, he found ways to teach, to connect, to remind himself and others that identity isn't defined by disease. As word of his surgery and radiation spread, a surprising shift took hold in Hollywood. Within weeks, major studios pledged donations to glioblastoma research, led by CAA and WME at the forefront. Craft services at soundstages featured gluten-free, low-acidity snacks to reduce patients' inflammation. It was as if Matthew's own fight had ignited a movement to soften the edges of an industry built on perfection. On the set of a new indie thriller, producers changed schedules to ease another actor's chemo treatments. The ripple effect of his courage had begun to reshape norms, proof that one life, when lived boldly, can alter the trajectory of many. By the end of February, the radiation scorched the final fraction, leaving Matthew both relieved and exhausted. His hair, once a glossy mane, thinned to stubble, his skin bore the faint redness of exposure. Yet in his eyes burned a resolve that cameras will never capture, a promise to at least see tomorrow. As he exited the radiation bunker, Camila wrapped him in her arms, whispering, "We're nearly through this." He pressed his forehead against hers and breathed in her scent, a blend of eucalyptus and determination. He could feel the world waiting just beyond those doors, filled with roles unplayed, laughter unshed, sunsets unsavored. This was not the end of his story, far from it. It was a prelude to what might become his greatest role of all, the patient who refuses to surrender, the father who stays to tuck in his kids, the husband who emerges from his own darkness to light the way for countless others. But every hero's journey has its turning point. In the final section, we'll reveal the prognosis after his last MRI, the unexpected twist that could redefine hope itself, and how Matthew McConaughey is already laying the groundwork for the next act of his extraordinary life. A week after the radiation ended, the McConaughey family gathered for Matthew's follow-up MRI. The morning sun filtered through the hospital corridor's windows, painting golden streaks across the sterile floor. Camila squeezed his hand as he lay on the gurney, listening to the soft hum of the scanner. He tried to summon that familiar confidence, imagining himself reciting lines on stage, but his heart pounded louder than any applause. When the technologist slid him into the machine, he closed his eyes and whispered, "All right, all right, all right," a private mantra against fear. Dr. Moreno, the radiation oncologist, arrived minutes later with Dr. Richardson at her side. They shared a nod of solidarity with Matthew before reviewing the images on dual screens. His chest tightened as the scans revealed the area once engulfed by tumor now displayed significant contrast enhancement around the margins. Initial measurements showed a 25% reduction in the lesion's diameter, a result even the doctors described as encouraging beyond expectations. Yet caution tempered their enthusiasm. Scar tissue can mimic residual disease, and migraines from swelling still lingered. "We have more work to do," Dr. Moreno warned gently, "but this is promising." Buoyed by that glimmer of victory, the family returned home to write the next chapter of their journey. They converted an upstairs corner of their Austin house into a makeshift therapy nook, outfitted with whiteboards, flashcards, and a small bookshelf of poetry that Matthew had always loved. Each morning, he recited lines from Whitman and Dickinson to sharpen his speech and feed his spirit, while Camila prepared turmeric-infused smoothies to fight inflammation. The children joined in with laughter, echoing, "I celebrate myself, and hope is the thing with feathers," like a living, breathing ritual. Neighbors dropped off freshly baked sourdough loaves. Neighbors who rarely crossed paths before but now felt an unspoken bond in solidarity. In that humble room, they crafted hope from the raw materials of family love. Meanwhile, in the broader community, Matthew's medical journey catalyzed renewed research funding. A prominent biotech firm announced a $1 million grant for glioblastoma immunotherapy research, citing the need to build on the very Stanford and MD Anderson protocols that had given Matthew a fighting shot. A gala organized by the Just Keep Livin' Foundation, his own charity, featured keynote speakers from renowned cancer centers and raised over $2 million in a single night. Local news stations broadcast live interviews in which survivors shared testimonies that mirrored McConaughey's grit and grace under pressure. Even state legislators in Texas proposed a bill to increase grants for rural healthcare programs, inspired by the way one Texan's battle had unified an entire region. This wave of action turned a private health crisis into a beacon of collective purpose. Amid these outward triumphs, Matthew faced an internal reckoning. Each morning as he practiced yoga on the back patio of their Hawaiian retreat, he felt the pull of two worlds, the star forged by Hollywood's unforgiving glare and the man shaped by Texan fields and family rituals. Friends in the industry urged him to return to the screen while he still could, framing roles around his real-life battle. A major streaming service offered a documentary series that would document his entire journey, from diagnosis to treatment. But Matthew hesitated. He wondered whether he wanted to inhabit the role of patient on camera, or to carve out spaces where his children would only know him as Daddy, not as a symbol of illness. That question would define his next decisions. In early April, after 6 more weeks of chemotherapy cycles and targeted immunotherapy shots, Matthew sat across from Dr. Richardson once more. His scalp had regrown into soft curls, and his eyes held an unwavering steadiness. The scans this time showed no sign of new growth, a milestone the doctors called stable disease. It wasn't remission, but for a glioblastoma patient, stability often meant precious months of clear skies. Camilla caught his eye and gave him a slow nod. In that gesture was the shared understanding that every day ahead was a gift. They would savor morning hugs, bedtime stories, and whenever possible, late-night songwriting sessions with acoustic guitar, unshackled from the need to perform a character. In the face of uncertainty, they had reclaimed authenticity. As spring progressed, Matthew's story became a testament to endurance. Articles in major magazines chronicled his unyielding spirit. In local coffee shops, patrons whispered prayers while toasting his health with artisanal lattes. Even as cameras trained on his next steps, he found solace in silent sunsets over Lake Travis, where the water mirrored the calm and steady resolve in his heart. Every wave felt like a promise of another golden sunrise. The summer sun loomed high above Austin as Matthew and Camilla sat beneath a sprawling oak in their backyard, hands entwined. Between them lay an open notebook filled with letters from fans, a teenage girl who found courage after hearing his speech on vulnerability, a Vietnam vet who credited McConaughey's journey with reigniting his own will to live, a school teacher whose class learned more about hope from Matthew's honesty than from any textbook. Each story struck like a struck match, illuminating new facets of the very human impact of one man's public fight. It was the kind of affirmation that both humbled and fortified him, a reminder that every step he took in this battle rippled far beyond his own life. Amid this personal renaissance, the film world began ringing with offers that few stars could refuse. A major director pitched a comeback role, a stoic lead haunted by past trauma, a part designed to intersect with Matthew's real-life narrative. Streaming platforms courted him with documentary specials, docu-series, and cameo appearances. Yet while these proposals twinkled like cinematic constellations, he realized that his true calling extended past the camera lens. In collaboration with neurology researchers, he initiated an annual symposium at UT Austin to share insights on patient resilience, raising funding and awareness for glioblastoma studies. In stadiums usually filled with cheering soccer fans, he stood under bright lights, recounting the week he almost lost his voice, and challenging the audience. What are you willing to fight for, even when hope seems out of reach? Every appearance, every speech felt like a rehearsal for a new kind of role, that of a survivor, a messenger, a catalyst for change. His foundation, Just Keep Livin', transformed its focus toward supporting families affected by brain cancer, providing counseling programs, financial grants, and weekly support circles. Volunteers painted walls with inspiring quotes from his memoir, Green Lights, turning bland waiting rooms into colorful sanctuaries of possibility. One evening, Camilla watched as a mother wept in gratitude, clutching a handcrafted quilt readied by volunteers who called themselves Team Matthew. It was in that moment, seeing real families touched by real hardship, that the actor's world expanded to include far more than auditions and box office deals. Still, the physical toll of treatment persisted. Chemotherapy storms returned in cycles, slamming his body with waves of nausea and exhaustion. There were days when even getting out of bed felt like scaling a mountain. On those mornings, he found refuge in ritual, a few sun salutations on the porch, a prayer of gratitude, whispered while brewing coffee, then a walk around the herb garden, where rosemary and mint released cooling scents. He let his children guide him through improvised games, laughter weaving through his core like a gentle tonic. Afterward, he would retreat to his writing nook and tap out reflections, capturing moments of pain and the smallest triumphs that punctuated them. A full night of sleep, a completed jog around the block, a day when he could deliver a speech without the tremor in his voice.